Are you ready to learn the truth about what lies beneath the noble facades of an elite school? Here, among the stone walls and sparkling windows, life is bustling, but not on the surface. 4 seasons, 4 shifts in mood, and hidden behind every corner are secrets that cannot be spoken aloud. Noisy conversations mixed with the aroma of freshly baked goods from the cafeteria become whispers of clandestine alliances. Every word spoken in company can turn against you, and silence can mark the beginning of anxious anticipation. It is incredible, but those who remain in the shadows acquire true power. Walking along the well-maintained paths, you can see rows of perfectly identical students in expensive suits and dresses. But behind their smiles lies a constant struggle for attention and approval. Who is in charge here? Who ultimately decides where the gaze lingers and who is overlooked? And it doesn't matter that you are studying with excellent grades. In this school, the highest value is the art of maneuvering. Here, the strongest do not survive. The one who knows how to wait, observe, and skillfully manipulate the situation without leaving a trace survives. It is one enormous game, and you either join it or remain in the shadows. Against the backdrop of friendly gatherings and laughter, movements, projects, and intrigue planning are actively unfolding. Every step, every decision is part of a carefully crafted strategy. And just when it seems everything has been done right, an unexpected betrayal can shatter connections that seemed unbreakable. Learn to look your enemies in the eye, but do not forget that silence is a powerful tool. Within silence lies the potential to influence others while remaining invisible. In this school, it is not loud calls that govern, but the ability to remain unnoticed, because true freedom lies in invisible presence. Stay with us to discover how inner calm becomes real strength and who will end up at the top of this unforgiving and ruthless hierarchy. What if I tell you that there are invisible boundaries in this world that separate us even in the heart of public places? School, a place where everything should be simple and clear, but in reality resembles a chaotic labyrinth where every step is a risk of getting lost. I stand on the front line, the foundation of my confidence shaking like a freshly lit fuse. Familiar faces surround me, but their gazes are filled with confusion and judgment. They are divided into groups like stars in the sky, distant, unattainable. I see eyes eager for analysis and assessment, and in that moment the entire atmosphere becomes charged with tension. Why am I so afraid? I think. It feels as if I have landed not in a school, but in a military camp where strict laws of unspoken brotherhood prevail. If only I could merge with those around me, dissolve into their confidence and serenity. Inside me, fear and hope are battling. It is here, in these school corridors, that I first confronted myself, with all my weaknesses and flaws. It seems my thoughts about how I hate this feeling of vulnerability fill me with even more fear. What place will I occupy here? Will I survive this first day without becoming an object of mockery? A persistent voice deep inside whispers, "Be brave. Don't let them break you." But how, if in the eyes of others I see only envy and indifference? This characteristic, this feeling of distance between the groups makes it hard to breathe, as if every exhale is a step into the abyss. The world around me is frozen like before the start of a performance. All these people, diverse and different, at the same time I feel lonely, as if I have become a stranger within the hall. How easy it is to get lost among what should unite. I need to find my way, but my blood is boiling with fear. This is just the beginning, and ahead lies such a complicated story waiting for its resolution. Are you ready to find out who truly runs your school? It may seem that the power belongs to the principal, but is that really the case? Imagine this. You walk through the halls of your educational institution and suddenly realize that the real decisions are made not by the loudest and most authoritative figures. For instance, that quiet guy in the back row whom everyone trusts, or the charismatic girl in your class who is watched like a star. They can change the game, and many don't even realize it. Think about how many times you've noticed one person, even without an official position, deciding where everyone will go during break. Or how a casual conversation among students can lead to a wave of changes in school traditions. Who really holds the thread of control in their hands? The principals with their strict rules, or the passionate ideas of those who know how to attract attention? These invisible mechanisms of influence envelop the school corridors, and only a few can recognize them. Let's lift the veil of mystery and take a look at the true forces at work in the school world, as sometimes even the most unexpected people can turn out to be real leaders. Are you ready to learn the truth about what happens behind the scenes of our everyday lives? Every word is a weapon, and reputation can be your best defense or your worst mistake. In a world where rumors flow like water, the slightest blunder can quickly turn into a stream of gossip, and your attempts to justify yourself will be in vain. Here in this harsh environment, every action of yours is monitored, and every word can be turned against you. Imagine. You accidentally made an inappropriate comment at a meeting, and within an hour it's being discussed in every corner of the office. A local scandal erupts, and your reputation starts to plummet. The question isn't whether you were right. The question is how quickly the world will find out. In this place where criticism and dissatisfaction coexist at every turn, the most valuable thing isn't achievements but the ability to save face. Here, within these walls filled with misunderstanding and expectations, it's important to remember. Even the smallest mistake can cost you everything. Give in, and you'll find yourself in the clutches of a criminal reputation. How do you survive in this world where every step is under scrutiny? Vigilance, caution, and the ability to manage your image are your best allies. And remember, sometimes silence is your most powerful weapon. What if I told you that one failed remark could lead to endless laughter in the classroom? The bell rang, and the whole school erupted in noise. Students, like released springs, rushed out of the classroom. But on the threshold stood he, the main character of our day. His heart raced so fast that it felt like the entire floor would hear it. Why? Because he had just uttered a phrase that turned into a humiliation of universal proportions. Laughter erupted in the class simultaneously. It was a festering wound burst open. His classmates, once friendly, suddenly transformed into wild predators. He could already feel his face flushing and his ears burning. What did he say? Nothing special, just a light joke, but at that moment it seemed more than inappropriate. As if he had pulled a sword from a stone, but instead of glory and honor, he was left with the bitter residue of humiliation. Impulsively, as soon as he said it, he realized these were not just words. This was a weapon that could destroy his reputation. The class, like a pack of wolves, took that phrase and spread it to every corner of the school. It became a meme. It became a joke, so laughter filled every lesson, every corridor. How to stay in the shadows when everyone around is laughing. All he could do was try to hide his vulnerability behind the laughter of others. But deep down he knew. Words can wound and sometimes even kill. They can evoke few responses, spark laughter, or conversely disdain. This situation made him ponder how easily one can show weakness without even thinking. Who needs enemies when one's own words can become the worst of them? And here he stands with a new meme swirling behind him, destined to live long and happily while he remembers how humiliation can become the loudest laughter in class. Once it was just funny, but now it will forever stay with him. a lesson on how dangerous it is to speak out of turn. What if I told you that the changing of the seasons is not only about nature but also about ourselves? Winter, with its cold and silence, envelops us in a blanket of isolation. We hide from the outside world like snow covering the ground. During this time, our inner world becomes as tangled and quiet as snow-laden expanses. However, spring comes. With its first breath, nature awakens from a long sleep, and we feel tension in the air growing. The buds on the trees become ever more insistent, as if whispering to us about changes. Along with the awakening of nature, we begin to feel a surge of energy, a desire to move, change, and grow. The light becomes brighter, and suddenly we realize changes are happening within us too. The changing of the seasons is like a mirror reflecting our inner transformations. Ice-cold hearts begin to thaw, and sparks of hope appear in our eyes. Spring awakens dreams within us that seemed to have slept in the winter chill. How does our environment affect us in these moments? What if right now, more than ever, we need to listen to our own desires and start taking action? We know that nature does not stand still, and neither should we. Revaluation, growth, and renewal, all of this, like the awakening of spring, can become our new reality. So let us face the changes with the scent of fresh grass and the chirping of birds reminding us, change is life, and it is always beautiful. Are you ready to consider one of the most frightening aspects of life? Why can silence evoke more fear than a loud scream? Think about it. When we hear a scream, we understand that we are in danger and we are ready to act. But what if absolute silence lies before you? It penetrates your soul, making you ponder whether something more sinister lurks behind it. Imagine this. You are in complete silence, surrounded only by emptiness. Your heart races because you hear neither footsteps nor breathing. Questions accumulate in your mind. Why is no one speaking? What happened? Perhaps your inner world fills with fear because auditory silence is not just the absence of sound. It is a hidden testament that something terrifying may lie beyond this fragile boundary of silence. Compare this to a dull, unsettling scream. There is clarity, there is motivation to act. But what if everything around us is emptiness? That is truly frightening. It presents a dilemma. What is scarier, the loudness of aggression or the quiet composure? It makes us think about how we perceive strength, power, and danger. In our minds, there are patterns suggesting that only aggression should frighten us. But in reality, what if suffering and fears fade into the shadows, into silence? We should lift the veil on what we think about dominance, about power, and how silence can become your most sinister enemy. Get ready for reflections that will make you rethink everything you know about fear and control. Are you ready to learn the truth about silence? It can be your best ally, or it can play a cruel joke. While others are immersed in discussion, someone remains in the shadows, a mysterious stranger among the group. It's like in a movie, the main character is in the spotlight, while the mysterious antagonist stays in the dark. Why does this happen? Silence is not just the absence of words, it is a deep mystery that we try to unravel every day. Imagine you are sitting in a room full of energy and ideas, but in the corner you notice a person who is just observing. The silent participant in the argument becomes the subject of discussions, intriguing, heightening curiosity. Their silent presence raises questions. What are they thinking? What secrets do they hold? Their silence attracts attention more than a multitude of words. We often underestimate the power of silence. It can be a weapon, a strategy, a fortress. Silence can command respect when words are valuable. That's why wise people sometimes prefer to pause, leaving space for reflection. Lost words may become a forgotten truth that calls out like an undisclosed book full of captivating stories. But what lies behind this mysterious way of communicating? Perhaps it is the fear of opening up. Maybe the person is simply absorbed in their thoughts. Sometimes silence is sincere. But therein lies the paradox of silence. It can be a manifestation of strength or weakness, openness or solitude. Consider a dinner with friends when someone suddenly goes quiet and a question hangs in the air. What are they thinking? Each of us can become such a silent enigma. So perhaps it's worth reconsidering your attitude towards silence. Silence is not just the absence of sound. It is an opportunity for dialogue, inner work, and sometimes it is precisely what is needed to find your voice among all the others. What if you could become the center of all gossip simply by silently agreeing? In the shadow of an ordinary hallway where mundanity frames every word, conversations linger. The elusive hero, invisible to everyone, becomes the object of attention without uttering a single word. Whispers behind the back transform into a whole symphony of rumors. Did you hear? He's become so strange. They say he has a secret. Why does he never laugh? He must have something on his mind. Each whisper is a drop filling the ocean of unsaid things. The hero's silence starts to accumulate myths, as if he has stepped onto a pedestal of mystery, and now every action of his is interpreted. He's not like us. A shadow of envy breaks through the admiration. People fill the empty space with their fantasies. He must have incredible abilities, says one. Another, with stretched whispers, adds, maybe he can even read minds. The hero, sitting at the edge of this social dynamic, looks out the window, shutting himself off from everything happening around. In his silence lies power, but also a curse. He becomes a mirror for others' projections. Every glance is perceived as a sign, every movement as a signal. How wrong this is, he thinks, but the words find no way out. For sometimes silence speaks louder than words, and in that silence lies the true truth about people and their fears. All he needs is just one step forward, one question at the center of this chaos. But as long as he remains in the shadows, the dark corridors of whispers continue to fill with his name, creating a legend that may be far from reality. What if your silence actually speaks of much more? I stand on the edge with 1,000 thoughts swirling in my head. My heart pounds as if it wants to break free. I want to say it. I want everyone to hear what is really happening. But the truth, wanting to escape, clashes with fear and uncertainty. Every time I open my mouth, it feels like touching a knife's edge. One mistake and everything will turn into a disaster. What will they think? How will they react? My words could change everything, but what if they make it worse? There are so many doubts around, like thorny bushes scratching my skin. I remember the moment when I first made peace with myself, because there is strength in staying silent. I know how people wait for answers, how they thirst for the truth. But silence is also an answer. It can confuse, it can deceive expectations. Every time I think I can speak, feelings of guilt and fear consume me. I start to imagine that by releasing my thoughts, I stir up a storm that could destroy everything around. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff. It's easy to take a step forward, but what's down there? A fall or a new horizon? Is my silence a sign of weakness? Or perhaps it's a shield that protects not only me, but others as well. Every time I see people waiting for my words, my inner conflict intensifies. I understand the price I pay for hiding my thoughts, and yet I realize that this might become my protection. Will I ever be able to escape this swamp of fear? Or will I remain forever in the shadow of my unspoken words? Are you ready to learn the truth about how conflicts change group dynamics? We all face them, but how do you react in such moments? There are three main strategies, and each affects people's interactions in its own way. Imagine you're at an important meeting and someone raises their voice. This is the first type of response, a loud counter-reply. All attention is focused on you, and instead of solving the problem, you create a new one. Your words may temporarily freeze the situation, but what consequences does that bring? People take sides, start defending themselves, and the group divides into opponents. This strategy, while powerful, can undermine trust and only unite people for a short time. Now let's consider biting sarcasm. This can elicit laughter and add a touch of lightness, but deep down it erodes the atmosphere. A sincerely heartfelt conversation turns into a battle of wits, where everyone tries to outsmart the other. Do you think anyone will stay on their side? More often than not, this leads to worse relationships, as sharp jokes take away respect and breed resentment. And finally, cold silence. Have you ever wondered what could be worse than a conflict? No reaction, a quiet bomb. You let the tension build, watching the details. In this case, won't the tension in the air grow before the explosion? Silence can sometimes be more eloquent than words. It can make people reflect on their behavior, but it also can lead to misunderstandings and even greater disputes. Each tactic strategically weakens the group in its own way. If you want to avoid a split, you need to learn to manage emotions and choose the right path. Which of these approaches have you tried? And which one turned out to be the most destructive for you? Let's figure it out together. Are you ready to face the true power of the spirit? Tension hangs in the classroom like a taut string. The hero's gaze glides across the face of the manipulator, who, with a smirk on his lips, carefully chooses his words like a chess player arranging pieces on the board. Each of them has their own game, but this time the rules will not be broken. The manipulator starts to lay out his poisoned speech, trying to confuse and strike a nerve. But instead of retaliating, the hero simply remains silent, holding his ground like a mountain before a storm. Thoughts boil inside him, but outwardly he seems frozen in eternity, listening to each aggressive phrase. Silence fills the classroom. Their gazes penetrate each other as if an invisible thread winds around them. The hero stands firm, as if his courage were made of concrete. It's uncertain whether this duel will hold, but his silence speaks louder than any words. He knows what lies hidden in the manipulator's words and is not going to fall for the tricks. Every second stretches like a rubber band, ready to snap. The sighs of his peers grow louder. They watch this prolonged standoff as if it were happening in a ring. Who will emerge victorious in this psychological battle? In this moment, the hero realizes true strength lies not in words, but in the ability to contain oneself, not to be caught by provocations. The climax approaches. The air becomes heavy with tension, and confusion is reflected on the faces of the spectators. Are they ready to see how the manipulated papers are scattered by the wind? Determination ignites in the hero's eyes. This is not just a game. It is a test of resilience. And while the manipulator continues his attempts to ignite a conflict, a deep-seated confidence sits within. He has already won simply because he chose silence over words. Are you ready for the shocking truth? Silence is not just the absence of sound. It is a real weapon in social interaction. When you enter a room full of people and hear nothing, it can provoke not only confusion but deep anxiety. Why does this happen? Let's try to recall a situation. You are at a party and your friend suddenly falls silent when you begin to talk about your success. How will you feel? You may feel pressure, as if an incomprehensible burden rests on your shoulders. The psychology of silence compels us to seek answers to unexpressed feelings, generating uncertainty and tension. Each of us has experienced this. The oppressive silence during a discussion on a decision, Or when your boss, having listened to your ideas, simply remains silent, leaving you waiting. This state can work wonders on our psychology, evoking various emotions from anxiety to alertness. Silence becomes a mystery that we strive to decipher. But here's what's truly astonishing. Silence can be everywhere in your life. It is not just the absence of words, but also the absence of reactions to the feelings and thoughts of others. When someone doesn't respond to your questions or doesn't accept your point of view, your trust in that person begins to fade, causing chaos and doubt in your mind. Silence is not only a soundless reaction or the result of fear. It is a tool that influences our perception of reality. It opens doors to realize our own fears and allows us to understand ourselves more deeply. How do you react to silence? Does your comfort depend on how actively the people around you are engaged in dialogue? The answer to this question could change your perception of interaction with the world. Get ready. We will dive into this mystery of silence and reveal how it affects us. Realize that silence may not just be quiet, but a whole world of emotions and sensations waiting for their moment. Embark on this amazing journey with us. What if I told you that we often misinterpret the power of words? There are leaders around us. Some speak constantly, are heard and appreciated, but how much do they really influence? There are also those who speak rarely, but every phrase they utter is worth its weight in gold. What makes one word weighty and another empty? Make sure you know your position. Think of those you respect and consider. Who is an authority for you? Someone who speaks all the time, or someone who pauses, reflects, and speaks only when they deem it necessary? Perhaps it is the silence that gives their words special power. How often do you see some people aiming to be leaders by criticizing everyone at every turn? But such an approach may prove ineffective. These thoughts lead us to reflect on the fact that often it is not the quantity of words that matters, but their meaning. Change your perspective on power and authority. Consider what truly matters. What if I told you that silence can speak louder than any words? The mentor sits across from the hero, carefully observing his reactions. Tension hangs in the air, and suddenly silence descends. It seems endless. The hero starts to fidget from discomfort, but the mentor just smiles as if he knows how this pause can change everything. "Do you hear?" he asks, scanning the room. "This is silence. It can be your ally in conversation." The hero doesn't understand what he means. The mentor continues, "When you speak, stay connected with what's happening around you. A pause is not just a break. It's an opportunity to give weight to your words. Listen to how the group reacts to the silence. You can feel when the attention focuses on you, and that's the moment to shift the mood." The mentor poses a question, not waiting for an answer, simply waiting. The entire room holds its breath. Even breathing becomes audible. After a few seconds of silence, he slowly continues, "Now give me an answer when you're ready." The hero struggles in uncertainty. What to do? Open his mouth or wait? Is he now the center of attention? Mentally, he counts the seconds, and then the moment arrives. I think I can do it," he says almost fearfully. The mentor gives an approving glance and says, "See? You used the pause, and it opened new possibilities for you. So when you're in a group, don't be afraid to be quiet." What if I told you that silence can not only change your relationships, but also open doors you never even knew existed? Silence is not just the absence of words. It is a powerful tool that opens new horizons and fundamentally changes the dynamics in relationships. When you stop speaking, you start listening, and it is in that listening that respect is born. In a world of interpersonal connections where everyone strives to make their voice heard, Silence speaks the loudest. Imagine a situation, a group of friends discussing their achievements. Everyone tries to stand out, sharing their latest accomplishments. And suddenly, amidst this chaos, there is someone who remains silent. Everyone's attention turns to them. Each person begins to wonder, why aren't they speaking? In that moment, they become the center of attention, and with just one phrase, they can set the tone for the entire conversation when they decide to say what truly matters. No one expected this silent observer to become the catalyst for the discussion. They possess great experience, knowledge that is ready to ignite the situation. But it is in silence that they accumulate their strength, showing through their quietness that they are ready to listen to others and assess the situation before acting. How does this happen? People begin to seek your gaze, worrying about what you think. Thus, you suddenly become an important player in the field of relationships. Your status in the group changes. People start to trust and approve of you. Reputation is not built on words. It is formed through actions, and sometimes actions are simply the ability to remain silent. Would you like to be treated with respect? Start with silence. Allow others to see you not as a perpetual talker, but as a wise interlocutor. Silence becomes an important step on the path to the authority you can and should acquire. It is not just a temporary move. It is a strategy that will work for you in the long term. What if your silence is the key to your success? What will happen if you stop speaking? Silence may seem harmless, but in practice it can become dangerous. Imagine how long you fade into the background while others around you start to take your place. Your ideas, your thoughts, your uniqueness remain unaddressed, and it's time to understand that silence is not just the absence of words. It's an active choice that deserves careful consideration. Think of John, who always had something to say but has recently become withdrawn. He quit his dream job because he didn't want to conflict, only to see his ideas auctioned off under someone else's name. His silence became the foundation of another's power while he looked on, viewing it as a tragedy, unable to utter a word. And this is not an isolated case. In a world where ideas are at stake, silence can become your loss. Don't let others take what rightfully belongs to you. Your voice is your strength, and if you don't use it, it will be hard to regain. Consider what you're losing by staying in the background. Your dreams, your influence, perhaps even your relationships. Remember that each of us has the right to speak. And if you have chosen to be silent, think about who might encroach on that. Don't let others build their power on your silence. Instead, let your words resonate loud and clear. Make sure the world hears your opinion. Are you ready to learn the difference between true strength and refined fear? Imagine a situation. You stand before a choice. Your inner voice whispers, "Take a step forward, it's beautiful, it's important." Yet instead, you hesitantly turn away, remaining in your comfort zone. The question arises, what is happening here? Is it self-control or fear of potential consequences? The silent fighter inside you may be a manifestation of strength. It requires no loud words or disagreements. It can hold back, observing the storm of emotions. But should you remain silent when it's time to speak up? Or is it just a convenient shelter from reality? It's easy to run away from problems, pretending they don't affect you. But don't miss the chance to face them head-on. Let's delve into it. When we talk about self-control, we mean a conscious decision to stop, think before acting. It's wisdom. It's strategies that help us maintain relationships and make considered decisions. But fear, it can cloud your reality, turning escape into a habit, into self-destruction. Imagine a situation. You're at an important meeting, and doubts begin to creep into your mind. You avoid questions that would open you up simply because you fear appearing vulnerable. What is it? Fear or a lack of self-control. It's important not only to be able to respond to challenges, but also to know what lies behind those responses. Let's pause and look deeper. Acknowledge your fears, give them a name, explore what causes them. What if I told you that honesty can change your life? The half-light of the library, quiet steps on the creaking floor. The hero sits at a table surrounded by shelves of books like in a fortress of knowledge. With each passing minute, he feels his burden starting to dissolve. At that moment, his eyes meet those of a stranger who happens to walk by. You know, I always thought I could never tell anyone about my fears, the hero begins, his voice trembling. I've spent so many years in a constant battle with myself. It's as if I put on masks so that no one would know the truth. The stranger pauses, letting out a sigh of relief. It's easy to breathe when you hear that someone nearby carries their inner world on their shoulders too. I know what that's like, he replies, leaning in trustfully. Each of us harbors a surge of emotions, but sometimes it's worth just stopping and saying, I'm here, without hiding behind words. The hero reaches a boiling point, as if a fire ignited in his chest, illuminating the darkness. But what if I lose everyone I love? What if they turn away from me? He leans in, searching for support in the stranger's eyes. Maybe some will indeed leave, the stranger replies, but those who truly matter will stay. It's a choice, and it's worth it. The hero feels an awakening, as if a new universe of possibilities opens within him. These words imprint in his memory like a spell that promises change. You're right, he says more confidently now. Maybe I didn't even realize how much I was waiting for this moment. The point of no return has been crossed. In the half-light of the library, surrounded by a mosaic of books, two people begin a new story. A story of selective trust. Every step, every word becomes a stride towards freedom. Honesty is not a weakness, but a power that can change lives. What if I told you that silence sometimes speaks louder than words? A deep silence hangs in the room. Tense gazes are focused on the hero, who has been visibly wavering for long minutes. Thoughts swirl in his mind. What to say? How to say it? He knows this moment could change everything. The tension in the air is palpable, as if an invisible thread connects him to every person in the room. His gaze sweeps across familiar faces. Some hope for wisdom, others for a solution. He realizes that the words spoken now will be remembered. This is not just a speech, but a moment when each of them must hear something greater than mere phrases. The hero straightens his back and takes a deep breath. He understands that he must say precisely what will be remembered, for words at the wrong time can evaporate, while at the right time they can transform perception. Sometimes silence is the loudest cry for help, he says, and the sound of his voice echoes off the walls, causing even the shadows in the room to freeze. The silence becomes even more palpable. He continues, diving into his thoughts. All those days, all the problems, all the doubts that have tormented him and his comrades. It's important to remember that our words are only valuable when we choose the right moment to express them, he adds. And at that moment, the audience begins to realize the attempt to tune everyone in to a breakthrough, to a new true communication. This is not just a speech, it is a call. A call to awareness, to action. The hero feels the tension in the room gradually dissipate, giving way to understanding and agreement. Everyone realizes that his words could be the very moment they have been seeking. It is a moment when all understand. Sometimes silence is strength, and at the right moment their voices can become the necessary change. What will happen if you stop limiting yourself? Imagine living in a world where other people's opinions do not overpower your desires and aspirations. where freedom is not just a word, but a reality you can create yourself. Many of us are shackled by the fear of judgment, devaluation, and misunderstanding from those around us. We are like in a cage built from the expectations and standards of others, not knowing how to break free. But true freedom begins from within. It is not just the absence of limits, but the ability not to give in to pressure and to separate your inner convictions from what others want to see. In a world full of rules and norms, it is hard to imagine living without conforming to others' opinions. But it is inner self-control that helps us cast aside fear and start making decisions based on our true desires. Remember how important it is to be able to say no in those situations when it is truly necessary. Yes, it can be frightening, but imagine that each time you assert your freedom, it is a step towards a more conscious life. It's like opening a door to a room where you are not met with others' expectations, but only you and your real needs. The philosophy of self-respect and choice becomes the foundation upon which we can build our lives. When you start listening to yourself, you will realize that the opinions of others are merely reflections of their experiences, not your truth. And once you learn to separate one from the other, real freedom will come. Think about those moments when you spent time pleasing others instead of following your instincts. This is a painful but important lesson. To accept yourself as you are. And here lies the key. Freedom does not come from the outside, it begins within. When you learn to value your own opinion more than those of others, you will be surprised at how the world around you starts to change. So, are you ready for these changes? Start in your mind, and soon your life can radically change. True freedom is giving yourself the right to be yourself. Do not let fear get in your way. Inner self-control is what will free you from the fear of others' opinions and make you a truly free person. What if I told you that silence could become your best friend? Think about it. In a world where noise and chaos surround us at every turn, we often run away from silence as if it were something frightening. We fill our days with pointless conversations, parties, and phone calls. And what do you think we lose in the process? Imagine this. You alone with yourself, sighing and allowing your thoughts to flow freely. What will you discover in this silence? Perhaps it will be an honest conversation with yourself about what you truly want from life. Or you might realize that you have dreams you have long forgotten. What would you learn if you stopped being afraid of silence? Perhaps this learning will allow you to know more about your strengths and weaknesses. You will feel your eyes opening as you stop hiding behind the noise. And at that moment, a question may arise. Who am I really when all this background noise disappears? Let's imagine for a moment that silence is not just the absence of sound, but a space where you can be reborn. The calmness inside you can become the very catalyst for the changes you have dreamed of your entire life. Check your thoughts. How often have you allowed yourself just to be? What feeling does it evoke? One day, when I was first alone with myself, the world around me seemed to freeze. I heard myself, my tenderly hidden desires and doubts. It was then that I finally realized that without this silence, I could not move forward. What do you think will happen to you if you give yourself a chance to learn in this silence? What if I told you that silence is not emptiness, but a force yet to be unveiled? In this quietude lies something greater than we can imagine. It's like that black hole that harbors light. We spend our days fearing to speak about our feelings, about our ideas, believing that words are the only way to be heard. But true power lies in the ability to be silent, in the ability to listen. When I first encountered this truth, my heart froze. I saw people around me speaking, shouting, but no one had the silence needed to hear themselves. Every moment of silence leads to deep self-discovery. It's like the gentle flow of a river that penetrates every corner of our soul, carrying away everything unnecessary. For behind every silence lies deep understanding, the realization that in silence we can connect with ourselves, our records, our hopes. As a wise person once said, emptiness is not absence, it's space for the new. We fear silence as if it were a gap in conversation, but in truth it's an opportunity to reboot our inner world. The truth is, when we find ourselves in silence, we begin to hear our inner melody, which has always been there but was merely longing to be noticed. It's like the light of the moon softly illuminating a dark forest, showing a path you have never seen. When I started to embrace this silence, it opened up new horizons before me. Understanding came at the most unexpected moment, right in the midst of a conversation when I simply froze, allowing others to speak. It changed my perception of conflict, communication, and life as a whole. I began to understand that silence is not weakness, but an act of profound wisdom and maturity. We live in a world filled with noise and bustle, where constant words prevent us from sorting out our thoughts. So why not take a pause? Let the simple and complete silence become your most sincere friend. It is better to explore your depth than to foolishly trivialize in empty words. It is time to integrate this ability into your life to feel freer and stronger. By saying goodbye to noise and chaos, you do not reject the world. You renew your connection with it. This is not just an ending. It's the beginning of a new chapter, and it is here in silence that you find true freedom and strength to be yourself.